All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are back again. Part two of our lecture here with color correction. We went through a couple of different techniques or approaches to applying your color corrective things. Creating a new layer, converting that layer into a smart object, apply the adjustment directly to it. So that way the smart filter part of it kicks in where you'll have the ability to make your adjustment. Usually I'm doing it globally to the entire picture with that way of doing it. So it applies to the whole entire picture, make the adjustment, and then you can always come back to that to finish out or correct it or do more adjustments to it. That's the idea of being that versatile and being able to be flexible. The other way is the adjustment layer. The adjustment layer, that technique is basically selecting something out of the picture and you want to apply the adjustment just to that one area. So you use an adjustment layer for that. That's a little more preferred for doing the local adjustments like that because you can make multiple adjustment layers to cover different parts or areas of the same picture because you have that adjustment layer and you have that layer mask. That adjustment layer has that layer mask on it that you can go in and refine the adjustment and refine the selection that you're applying it to after the fact. So don't get caught up in, making the adjustment, you know, quickly or global, making that local adjustment and trying to spend a lot of time getting that selection exactly right because it's not really necessary from the start because you can always come back to it later. Now, what I'm going to do is going to show you a couple of different techniques you can do with some of these adjustments. Um, and just show you different scenarios with different pictures of what you could do and how you can make some things happen. Some things are a little complex that I'm going to show you, but they can create some very nice final results, and they work across the board for most pictures. With whatever the issue or problem is in that picture, you can kind of make the same adjustments as you go along. So the first thing is here in this basic folder, the last picture, this make gray. This technique here that I'm about to show you is going to use a tool that's called a color sampler tool. It's going to use your info panel to set up what that color sampler tool is going to do. And I'm going to explain it as I go along. We're going to, this is where, again, things can get complicated. We're going to apply a couple of different adjustment layers that's going to make what we need happen on this picture. Um, and it's just technique. It's just it's a process to go through. Do you need to go through this process on every picture? No. It's just me showing off and showing you what can be done with the features that are available here in Photoshop. You don't necessarily have to do this on each and every picture you ever will use. So understand that this is just a process. So first thing we need to do, we need to go to our window menu and we need to look up the info panel so we can get that pulled up. What the info panel shows you, okay? And I wish I could make these things bigger so it's easier for you to see, but it won't let me to change the interface to make it any bigger than this without changing my whole screen to make it bigger, which is going to be weird. Anyway, when you hover your cursor, no matter what tool that you're using, when you hover your cursor over top of your picture, you're going to see a bunch of different numbers show up in your info panel. Initially, it will show you, because I've been playing with this and there's no way to reset this particular panel. Normally, what you'll get is RGB numbers on one section. Another section, you'll see CMYK numbers. And then you'll see like an X and Y coordinate of where your cursor is sitting. And then you'll see like a width and height if you were using like one of your selection tools. Like if I was using like the marquee tool to make a marquee selection, you would see a W and H show up that would show you, where the width and height of my selection is going to turn up to be. That's what your info panel normally shows you. Now, what we need the info panel to show us for one of these two eyedroppers up here, either one of them, we need it to show us the value of black only in this picture. Now, why are we doing that? Looking at this picture, it looks kind of dull. All right. And why does it look kind of dull as far as the color? Well, it was taken indoors. You have these diffusion, this light diffusion type of curtains on the window. It may not be a very bright day outside, but it's bright enough. But this diffusion is kind of diffusing the light coming in. You got these little mirror table and this mirror here, this gray door, the gray sheet that's on the table. Everything's kind of bland and blah. That's reflecting into the yellow flowers, and the flowers are looking kind of sad too, but at the same time, they're just not the bright, vibrant flowers. And the color, of everything is kind of dull and lifeless. So we want to try to bring some of that out. How you do it is going through this technique. What I'm going to do is sample the darkest color in this picture and then sample the brightest color in this picture. And if I can, try to sample the middle tone color in this picture. So what I'm looking for 100%, somewhere close to 100%. That would represent the darkest part of the picture. I want to find a 0% or somewhere close to it that represents the lightest part of the picture. And then if I can find a 50% gray that will represent that middle tone. That's usually harder to find. Usually you can find the light and dark spot. So like for instance, on the mirror here, that's probably the lightest spot, somewhere on the mirror because of the reflection, or maybe somewhere on the table, with the mirror reflection on the table, or maybe even in the curtains up there. You might find a real bright, almost towards 0%. Doesn't exactly have to be zero, close to it. The darkest part of the picture is probably down here in the shadows where the frame of this mirror is. That's probably where the darkest spot, or maybe down here where the folds in this little table curtain thing going on there. You may find a darker spot, there, or maybe up here in the door somewhere. Middle tone gray could be somewhere around on the door, where you may find a middle tone gray, if you can. Now, in order to find that and mark it, you're going to do two things. First thing, up here in the info panel, on the eyedropper, you can click on that eyedropper and actually change what's displaying. So I would change it to grayscale. If you change it to grayscale, you're going to get K, which is representing for black. So now anywhere I move my cursor around, I can see that percentage number, so I got kind of a low number on there. If I go over here to the shadow of this frame on the mirror, I get kind of a high number there. If I go over here to the door, I can get somewhere around the 50%. And if I'm careful enough, I may find an exact 50% somewhere if I move my cursor in the right spot. But I'm looking at the numbers that are showing up there in the info panel, not necessarily looking at where my cursor is going, when I'm trying to sample that spot. Now, in order to mark that area so I can come back to it later, there is a thing called a color sampler tool. So hidden underneath your eyedropper, so if I right click on my eyedropper tool, hidden underneath is this color sampler tool. What this allows me to do is when I find a spot, I can click to set that up as a marked area, as a marked spot, and get a little, what looks like a little crosshair showing up. It's going to show, and the number value for it is going to show up in your info panel. At the bottom of your info panel and be numbered off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's do the highlight first. So if I move my cursor around the curtains here, I get numbers in the teens. I see an 8 and 7% right there in that real bright spot. If I look over here on the mirror, I get a 9% kind of consistently. Oh, by the way, another thing that you may want to take a look at is up here in your options bar, sample size. Mine is set by 3x3 average. If I put it to point sample, you'll probably see it, the numbers jump around a little bit differently versus the 3x3. But 3x3 average is kind of like my go-to because it's looking at every 3 pixels surrounding the one that I'm on top of. Another thing is that if you don't like this eyedropper looking icon, you could turn on your caps lock key. And when you turn on your caps lock, it'll turn to a crosshair. So the center of the crosshair now is the spot that you're on, the point that you're on. If that's easier for you or better for you to kind of pay attention to. But you're looking for the lowest number you can get, which I'm just going to use the mirror here and find that 9%. and I'm going to click, boom, and that sets that target. In your info panel, you'll see an eyedropper with number 1 above it. That is the color value there. I'm going to change that eyedropper to grayscale as well. So I see that K value of 9%, so I know what that is. Now I want to look for the shadow, the darkest area of the picture. So I'm trying to find the lowest number. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly 100%. But you want to find, the highest number you possibly can. Down here by the frame of this mirror, is where I find like 95%. So I can use that. So I click, set that target. That becomes number 2. And then I can change that to grayscale as well. Now comes the third one. If you want to take the time to try to do this in a picture like this, where there's a lot of gray on this door back here, you might be able to find a 50%. You don't want to find 49 or 48 or somewhere close to 50%. You want to find exactly 50% if you can. If you want to take the time to do that, you can do that if you want to. Sometimes I get lucky and I find it, by moving my mouse around. But most of the time, you don't need it, for the most part. You just really need the first two, the highlight spot and the shadow spot. As long as you got those, you're good. Now comes the next stage to this. So next stage, after you've marked those spots, you're going to use those spots to set in your levels or your curves what the highlight or what the shadow is supposed to be in the picture. That's going to do a bunch of different things to the picture kind of automatically. So to get this done properly, I do not need this red and white striped area down here with Andy Katz's name on it. I don't need that to be part of the calculation that happens in this picture when I'm making the adjustment. I want to leave that alone because it'll throw off the numbers for what I want to do. So what I'm going to do while I got this zoomed out like this, I'm going to use my rectangle marquee tool, and I want to make a marquee selection across everything but that white and that red. So I'm going to go down like that to make that selection. That way I select everything above that white stripe, which is the picture that I need. Now I can make an adjustment layer. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom of the layers panel, half and half circle, choose levels. That's going to make an adjustment layer of levels. The properties panel is going to reflect the histogram of that area only and not the white and the red piece of it there, because I don't need to have that as part of what I'm trying to do, right? Now, I need to go back and see those targets. Notice the one thing that you'll notice when you switch over to a different tool, those targets will disappear on you. But if you go back to your color sampler tool, the targets come back. They didn't disappear. They didn't go away. They just turned off temporarily until you go back to the tool. It's just the way that, the tools work. Now, uh, while I have the properties panel open with this adjustment, again, you got to click on that little icon. If you see that little that little warning coming up down there, you got to click on it so that way it'll adjust the histogram as it needs to. Next to the histogram, you got these eyedroppers. Okay. The top one is your shadow. If you hover over for a second, it'll show the black point. You can click onto that to set your black point. You can click on to the one in the middle, that's your middle tone. And the one at the bottom, that is your highlight. So clicking onto the eyedropper will allow you to go to the picture and sample an area that would be your highlight spot, the brightest spot on the picture, or the shadow point, which is the darkest spot on the picture. So this way it can adjust automatically for you brightness, contrast, and color cast, because there is this kind of grayish color cast going across everything. So I can go to the brightness eyedropper, find that number 1 target, line up my crosshair, and click. That's a bright point. Then I can go to the shadow eyedropper, again, line up the crosshair and click. And that's my shadow point. So what has happened now is that the balance of the color, and again, there's an eyeball there at the bottom of the properties panel. You could turn on and turn off to see like beginning, to see like before and after, and you can see the big difference that happens. Things are a lot brighter. That grayish color cast is gone. You can now go and start making adjustments uh, for the different channels if you want to bring out, some more green, or maybe I could turn the green down and maybe turn the blue up a bit, to give this room a little more blue to it. Go to the red channel, maybe increase the red. Yeah, it looks terrible. Let's not do that. Yeah. And you can make some further adjustments as you want to with the different channels, on this particular adjustment. Now you can also go to saturation. You can go to any of the other adjustments that you want to do to bring out more color or add more color or anything like that. But this is kind of if you take the time to use this info panel, use that color sampler tool, set that light and that dark spot on the picture, you can use that to take care of brightness and contrast and color balance on the picture immediately. It's kind of an instantaneous thing. It's a neat little trick. Now, what some people have argued with me is like, yeah, that's a neat little trick and that looks great, but that doesn't work on every picture. Well, yes and no. No, it doesn't work on every picture, but it can do a pretty good job on a lot of pictures. I'll give you a good example. This picture here is called Girls. It's outside of the basic folder. It's in the color correct folder. This one is an extreme problem because this picture was taken, mom and dad took the shot of the kids on the beach during vacation time. I don't know if this is at sunrise or sunset. I don't know what's actually going on, but the little girl right here, she is angry. Looks like she's got problems. But the main thing is that this picture is overly red because, again, taking at sunrise or taking at sunset. So this big red color cast is going across everything. So while it's not difficult to see the individual kids, the contrast is not there either. And the brightness needs to be adjusted for. So how can we go about doing that using what I just showed you? Well, same thing, info panel is set to K for the K value. I go to the color sampler tool, and now I start moving my cursor around and trying to find first, I'll find like the brightest spot in the picture. Now, the thing is concentrating on the subject. The subject of this picture is the kids, specifically the girls, because they're in the forefront while the two boys are in the background. They're not important. They're not important. The girls are the ones that's important in this case. I was going to make a terrible joke that I had in my brain, but I didn't want to do it. So I want to make sure I sample the light and dark area surrounding the girls. So I'm looking at their hair, looking at their dress, their little dresses they got on, for that bright spot. Now, you're not going to find anything in a low number, meaning you're not going to find, 10 or 12 or something like that, like I did before. You're going to find a low number, but it's probably going to be in the 30s, 40s, maybe, you know. So that may be a little more difficult to do. Now, there is another technique. There's another adjustment layer you could do to temporarily show you the darkest and brightest part of the picture if you want to utilize it. So half and half circle. There is this thing in here that um, threshold is here. Now, threshold is weird. It's going to show you a histogram in the properties panel. It's going to give you one slider. That one slider is exactly at the 128 middle tone. So if you're looking for the mid-tone color, you're looking at it right now, 128. That's the middle tone. And you could, if you wanted to, you could mark that. That's the middle tone color, right? Of the picture. And whatever it is, doesn't matter what the value is, that's now the mid-tone color. You can move it to one extreme or the other. If I move it up to towards the 200 range to the end of this histogram, because I can't go past the information is. I got to go a little bit there. Now it shows me these little tiny specks of the darkest parts of the picture. Again, the girls are down here, not up there in that corner where those splashes are. So if I find these little areas here, let's move this a little bit further over because I don't need to get the darkest. Make it a little bit lighter, and I can use that, and I can mark number 2. That's my darkest part of the picture. right? So that's the darkest. That's the no, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. That's not the darkest. That's the lightest part of the picture. All right. So number one is the middle tone. Number two is the lightest part of the picture that's moving to the right. And then if I move to the left, this is going to be the darkest part of the picture that I'm looking for now. And everything's dark. But now what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the dark color. So when I went one direction for the lightest color, I was looking for the bright color, the light white. So now I'm looking for the dark black when I'm looking for the darkest color in this threshold. And again, I'm not concerned about the rocks and everything that are behind the girls. I'm more concerned about the girls themselves. So I'm trying to find the darkest spot within them. So it could be like right here on the chin or this area right here. I can make that my number three, which would be my darkest part of the picture. Probably right at zero or closest to 100% in this case. Now I can use that to find those spots in the picture to mark so that way I can use them for the levels adjustment. When I'm done with threshold, I don't need that threshold adjustment layer anymore, so I can just throw it away. Once I found those particular spots and marked them. I don't need a like I did before with the marquee tool to select anything. So I'm going to go back to this half and half circle and I'm going to go to levels again and again with the levels. I click on that little warning. And now, again, number three is my darkest spot. Number two is my lightest spot. And number one is my midtone. So if I go to the lightest part, I'm looking for my number two. Yeah, number two is the lightest spot. So I can click, set that as my lightest part of the picture. I go to my shadows to find the number three. That's the darkest part of the picture that I'm going to use. So a click will set that. And since I found the midtone, I'm going to see what happens if I set this midtone value. And that would be the number one. Put a click. See, that throws everything off. That just went completely googly bits. If things like this happen, with any of them, it's not a bad thing. It's just it's not the adjustment that you need to use. You can pick a different area for a different adjustment level, so that way it can readjust accordingly, or just not use that one at all. Don't use that target. Pick a different target. In other words, so for highlights, that was number two, and then for shadows, that was number three. Midtone sometimes just doesn't work on every picture, but the highlight and the shadows do all the time. So now I got the balance going. I got the color cast out of there. The brightness and contrast is okay, but now I can adjust a little bit more if I want to with the brightness and the contrast, to make a little bit more fine adjustments. Their skin tone. They look like lobsters. They've turned red. They've been out in the sun way too long. This is a different adjustment that I would do. I wouldn't be using this kind of global adjustment. I'd be doing a different adjustment layer that target just like their skin color. For the girls and the boys back there, probably could be the same one. Now, this is where a different tool can come into play. So I want to show you this tool. I don't use it at all really because I just don't. Mainly because it's brand new. And where did it go? It's a brand new tool. I don't even know where they put it. That's a selection brush. Oh, there it is. This tool right here. So let's see, let's count. Two columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is 8 buttons down. It's the adjustment brush tool. This is going to create an adjustment layer for you based on the area that you paint. All right. So it's going to create an adjustment layer for you based on the area that you paint over. And then that's the area that's going to be affected. It's kind of like putting your selection tool together and the adjustment layer together at the same time. That's what this tool does. Now, up at the top in the options bar, that's the first place you have to go when you choose this. You got to pick what adjustment you want to do. You know, uh, levels, curves, hue saturation, whatever. Usually hue saturation in this case, since I want to change the color of their skin tone, probably works a little bit better with hue saturation. You have the ability to there's a two buttons for adding and subtracting from the painted area, the selected painted area, and then you can adjust for a different type of brush. Again, when all these adjustment layers and layer masking and all that sort of thing, the soft round and the hard round brushes are going to be the better choices than all the rest of the other brushes. So I'll use like the soft round brush for this. Let's see the other options. You have this overlay option. So with overlay, it creates an overlay that you'll be able to paint over to try to see, to try to paint the adjustment that you're making. So you can get that adjustment. By the way, turn the caps lock key off if you have it on. I had to turn mine off. The opacity of the overlay, you can adjust for that, for the opacity of what you paint in and paint out. And what you are supposed to be able to do is paint over the area that you want to affect. So I'm painting over the legs here of the older girl and part of her hand here. And I'm not trying to get this exactly right at first, but once I let go of my mouse, what ends up happening is that that adjustment layer shows up, you know, for you to start making your adjustments along with the property panel will, reflect and show you what's going on. Now, the whole idea of this with this tool is to be able to use your painting skills to paint over the areas that need to be adjusted for first. And, paint over those areas and get that painted as exactly as you need. And then you come back up here into the options bar and turn off the overlay. So then you can go and do the adjustment through the properties panel. And now, while that works, because see, I could turn the saturation down, and you could see on the legs and the hand over here how it's taking that overly saturated redness, and I'm just turning it down and turning it off. And now things are, uh, my computer's trying to catch up to itself. Okay, so I can, adjust for the redness value there to kind of tone it down. I don't want to go too low because then it's going to make the skin kind of pasty. So I want to take some of the redness out, but you can't take all of it out. I can play with the lightness value. And that kind of helps with the pastiness of the skin to kind of darken or lighten it up a little bit, but it makes it look better than it did before. So you can't take the redness completely out because then you would be that pasty gray type skin, and that looks worse um, than leaving it as it was. But this adjustment layer brush is a new thing that does what you could have done just as well some other kind of way. Like, so instead of doing what I just did with that adjustment layer brush, let me throw this away. I don't need the info panel right now. The properties panel can stay there. Let me show you. I could go with the quick select tool because that works just as well. Make a rough selection around the legs, and I'll get the little girl's feet. As part of the selection here, I can hold down that Alt or Option key to take the rock area out of the selection. And again, not really being very accurate, just kind of rough, just to get something going. Then once I do that, then I can go to the half and half circle, go to hue saturation, like I did before. And same thing, I can turn the saturation level down. That takes some of the redness out. Play around with maybe darkening the skin a little bit. to kind of play around with how much of this redness that I want to keep in. It's making it too dark. There I go. To get that balance there. That's the exact same thing as I did before. You know, now this layer mask, it's a mask. So what I can do also to add on to this, once I get that adjustment the way I want, I just go to my regular brush tool, right? Make sure I'm using my default colors, which is hitting the letter D on the keyboard. Hitting the letter X would switch back and forth between the two colors of black and white. I want to make sure white is my top color so I can paint the adjustment further on the rest of this picture. I want to make sure in the options bar, I'm picking probably the soft white brush, the soft round brush for the type of brush I want to use. I want to make sure my blend mode is at normal, my opacity. I want to put that back up to 100% so I can paint 100% on there right now. Smoothing at 13, flow is at 100%. So now I can go over the face and paint. And what I'm doing is I'm painting on the layer mask, the hue saturation layer mask, to paint this adjustment on the face of the kids, of the girls, on the neck, on the arms. So the same adjustment that I did with that adjustment brush tool, I can do with this. And I'm doing the same thing. It's just, it may seem like more or less steps. I don't know. Adjust the brush with your square bracket keys to make the brush bigger, smaller as you get into the little tighter areas there. Try not to go over their clothes too much. I'm just trying to go over just their hands and arms and not really touch their outfit or the rocks behind them or anything like that because I really don't need to have that part of the adjustment. You may or may not notice, but it does get noticeable. The more and more you do these type of things, you'll notice how if you're not accurate, you will see that miscoloration, especially when you start doing further adjustments later and you're trying to adjust and change the same area, you'll notice that certain stuff did not turn out like you wanted to. But I'm just painting and I can go and do the boys up here too with the same adjustment because it'll work for them as well. If it doesn't, then you can, make the same kind of process, just on them. Base there, there. And now I've got the adjustment made. So again, I can now do kind of before and after. That's before, after, you know, big improvement. And you're still not done because um, that adjustment layer, all right, does have a blend mode and it has an opacity, which means that you can apply that adjustment through these different blend modes and enhance it even further, with the blend mode and the opacity. Now, none of these will probably work, but if I go down to uh, the overlays or the soft or hard lights, sometimes those could work better. Maybe hue or saturation. My computer has to catch up to itself because none of this is looking right. So you could pick a different blend mode and get a different resulting effect from it. Usually saturation is the one that I would go after if I'm using the hue saturation adjustment or even hue. That's another one that could possibly work to kind of add to the subtleties of things to make it not be so obvious or what have you with things. And opacity works with it as well. So these adjustment layers are very versatile. You can highlight and access one certain area, or you can cover the entire picture if you need to. But you can see how this works. That info panel. with that color sampler tool, being able to sample the light and the dark areas of the picture, the highlight and bright spots of the picture, using that within what you're doing to enhance and almost automatically fix a color cast or color balance issue, that's very powerful and very useful. So it's just a matter of knowing that the tools exist and then knowing how to use those tools at different scenarios will help you better formulate in your mind when you run into these different situations. Okay, I need to do this for this and do this for this kind of thing. That's how that kind of works out. All right.